Spring is my favorite season. Everything just feels so alive and green, and you get a new chance in the garden every single spring. No matter what you did last year, no matter your successes or your challenges or failures, you get a chance again every single year to learn and to change the way that you garden and to change how your garden grows. I'm Tanya from Lovely Greens, and today I'm going to show you my gardens in May. Even though it's windy, even though it's gray right now, it just feels so great to be outside, and it's such good therapy. So many of us who've been gardening for a long time know how good it can be for the soul and how good it can be for the mind, and clearing away all of the stresses and everything going on. And I've had my share of that recently because on Friday I lost Chibi's, my little cat. And 6 months previous to that, I'd lost her brother. And I spent all day yesterday just working in the garden, and I had a couple of little cries, and I think it's done me a lot of good, and I feel a lot better. And just being outside and seeing everything fresh and green and living reminds me that life goes on. A friend of mine, Melissa, she says that everything that she's learned about life, she's learned in the garden, and I think that that's true. Anyway, enough of this emotional chat about gardening. Let's go have a look to see what's growing. This entire bed is potatoes, and I think I'm growing 6 or 7 varieties. And since I'm very low on having access to compost or composted manure this year, I'm growing them just using a traditional method. So in the past I've used no dig, and I really do enjoy growing them that way, but when it comes down to it, I've got to grow whichever way I can, and so that means earthing them up. And so I used a drawing hoe, and I've just been pulling the soil up and over the mounds, and that will help to keep the potatoes from going green and give them more space to grow. I've held off planting out my cabbages and Brussels sprouts at the bottom of this bed, but I have sown carrots, and they're just inside here. They're starting to germinate, little tiny things. Lots of weeds in there too, but I'll leave those alone until I can better see all of the carrot seedlings coming out. I've just noticed just how many red currants are going to be on this bush this year. Look at all those green berries. See them? They're everywhere. It's been a great year for apple blossom and all kinds of fruit blossoms. And I think it's safe to say that there's going to be a lot of apples and fruit later on in the summer. And I want to show you something down here. This is so exciting. Do you know what this is? This is probably one of the most difficult flowers to grow. It's the blue Himalayan poppy. And it's been planted here for years. I'm so excited that this year it finally has bloomed. Isn't it stunning? This patch is what I like to refer to as the wildlife patch, and I've done quite a bit of work in here. And I've taken out the green alkanet that was invading. No doubt we'll be seeing it sprout up again sometime soon because it is persistent. But I have lots of other things in here. I have the Egyptian walking onions, which you see here, valerian, which is a plant that's used in herbalism. The roots can be used as a natural sleep aid, and the flowers smell incredible. And then down here there's a new Dyer's coreopsis, peonies, comfrey, knapweed, astrantia, lovage, and lavender. So much going on in here, and it will be filling out very soon. And it goes all the way down to the pond, which is blossoming with the native flag iris, these yellow flowers here. And I've put the solar-powered pond pump back in. It's just a little fountain, and it's helping to aerate the water in here. And there are plenty of tadpoles and other life in here, but I think that it's minus one frog. I was here a couple of days ago and I saw a bird take off with something big. Oh dear. This here is a new addition to the pond. It's watercress, and I have one at home as well. And I had this spare one, so I've put it in here. I probably won't eat it, but it will provide some more cover, I hope, for the frogs and the tadpoles that live inside. If you look closely, you'll see what look like blades of grass sticking up out of the soil. And these are all leeks that I've transplanted recently. And I basically made a hole in the ground with a stick, popped them in and watered them, and then I'll just leave them, give them a water every now and again. But for the most part, they're fine. It all looks like bare dirt, but trust me, this will all fill up very quickly once it starts warming up. All of the beans are at home in the greenhouse right now, and they'll be going on this new structure. Soft fruit, so I've got the gooseberries, the josta berries, and I think I've got some potatoes at the bottom as well. And next to it, this is where I'll be planting a lot of the pumpkins and squash. Next week, I'll be giving you a proper introduction to all of the new things that I have in the garden, including the strawberry cage. But in the meanwhile, just want to say that the new Mara de Bois plants are doing well. They're mulched. A lot of them are flowering. There's quite a few green fruits in there, which is why I worked quickly to get them all covered, because as soon as the strawberries start ripening, they'll be eaten by birds, pheasants in my case. To the left over here, the raspberries are doing well. I built that structure over the winter, so it's a new raspberry support, and it's doing its job. It's keeping them in. And as they get a little bit taller, I'll be tying them in to the wires that are here as well. That's not the end of the tour either, because I have another garden at home, the home garden. So let's go have a look to see what's growing there. The allotment is where I grow a lot of the crops that don't need as much daily tending. And it's here at home that I'm growing a lot more leafy greens. This is something new. I've got watercress growing in an old vintage washing basin. We're gonna see how it does. It was actually in a bit more of a shaded area, and I've moved it more into the sun. See if it perks up. It has been a bit cool recently. The planter that I made a few videos ago is starting to come to life. I've sown some carrots inside, 3 rows of them. And it's deep enough for the carrots, keeps them elevated so they're beyond the reach of carrot root flies, so I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that. The green stalk planter, I added another tier onto it. Yet to plant it up yet, but there'll be some greens in here soon. And the rest of the Asian green vegetables are starting to bolt and get to the end of their life, so I'll be replacing them very soon. What I do have to say about this planter, and this is the veggie pod, is that everything that's growing inside of it is really well protected, and it has been getting a bit cooler recently, and the plants in there are much bigger than the same ones that I have planted in the raised beds right now. Lots of different things growing in the containers, lettuces, there's some more radishes over here. These are all ready for picking. I've got various flowers as well. This is an edible flower called rose geranium. It's also my favorite essential oil. Sweet peas. These are lettuces under fleece, and this is just to protect them from the wind and the cold. It has really gotten a bit colder recently. But the lettuces that are in my gardenia planter are doing great, and I think it's because it retains heat really well. So there's lots of things going on here. And if you check out my previous video on quick start guide to growing in containers, you'll see the growth difference with things like the arugula here, the lettuce that I sowed into this little pot. I think that's a great color combo. What do you think? And then everything that's in the L-shaped planter is starting to fill out as well. This is a perennial onion that I've started growing this year. And there's also kale back there. And I have so many tomatoes that I decided to plant a few out and see how they do. If you look right there at the very end of the walkway, you'll see a brand new strawberry pallet planter. And that's my most popular video. It's got well over 2 million views. And I made this up just a couple of weeks ago and planted it up with strawberries that I'd propagated from the Mara des Bois strawberries in the allotment. We're not going to be able to get inside the greenhouse, and you can see why. The entire floor is covered in plants, and these are all in the process of being hardened off, but it's just too cold to put them outside today. And in fact, a few days ago, I put out my squash and I was away for the day at the allotment, and I came back and they'd already started getting a little bit damaged from the cold. So they're staying in here for just a little bit longer. And I've got calendula in here, so those ones will be going out to the allotment soon. I have broccoli, so this is the green calabrese type. There's cabbages, there's kale, there's Brussels sprouts, all kinds of things that need to go out to the allotment in here in the garden. Those are green beans, and oh my goodness, it looks like there's some slugs in there. All that damage there is new from yesterday, so I'm gonna have to go through and have a look at those. And you can see the tomatoes are planted up in between everything else here in this big planter. And then over here on the shelves, they're heaving too. I think that I have a plant problem. I took the tulips out of the Belfast sink, and there's some sweet peas growing in it right now. And this is just willow that is fully dried out, so it's not going to start growing, and I've just bound it up. And when these plants begin growing, I'll start winding them around the willow a little bit better. But for the most part, they're just low to the ground and keeping warm. The potatoes that I have in the bags are doing really well. I've covered them with another layer of compost, and it looks like they're ready for another one. So with these, I'm just unrolling the bag, covering all the foliage with compost, and then letting it grow again. And I'll do that a couple more times before they're ready for harvest. This one is really big. Look at that. I think that's one of the purple potatoes. Any guesses as to what I have planned for this little patch? Let me know as a comment what you think I'm going to be building here very soon. Now, the raised beds, they're starting to fill up. And this one here, you can see I've got some fleece over hoops, and that's creating a bit of a mini greenhouse effect inside. And this is where I have a lot of the pak choi and the choy sum and some lettuces here in the foreground. And they're doing really well, and it's so much warmer in there, I can feel that. And this is very light fleece. You can get different grades of it, much thicker types as well. But this is just giving those greens enough protection to be able to grow and do well, even if it isn't the warmest. Moving past the roses, which are about to bloom. And we have the next bed, which has my peas, and they are doing great. They don't mind it being too cold, and they're climbing up willow as well. And then I have moved the tunnels over here because these guys needed a bit more cover. And there's spinach in there, and kohlrabi and beetroot. I'm just gonna tuck them back under again. In this last bed, I have a couple of lettuces down here at the end. But I also have two different types of kale planted here, and they're both heritage varieties, a bit rare. This one is palm kale, and that's from the Real Seed Company, the Real Seed Catalog. And this is Uncle Bert's purple kale. And this is through the seed sharing scheme with Garden Organic. And I like the look of it already. And to be honest, it's doing better than the palm kale, because the palm kale has had a bit of damage from slugs, but the purple kale doesn't. So it's a bit hardier. Hopefully the flavor is good. And then let's have a look inside the tunnel here. So underneath this fleece tunnel on the left, that's all coriander. with cilantro leaf. And then there's lettuces down the middle there. And between the strings, I've sown carrots, 3 different varieties. And they're all little tiny seedlings right now. And keeping them in the raised bed, I think, will keep them away from carrot root fly as well. And it will be nice to have some carrots here at home. And with the planter on the patio, I think we're gonna have a lot. You know, I was working in the home garden yesterday, all day, and Josh came out and he said that gardening is like a full-time job. And it really is. But it's one that we love and we enjoy and we don't mind putting the blood, sweat, and tears into, because it's just an amazing artistic creation plus food in the end, right? I hope you have enjoyed looking around the gardens with me. And if you've got any questions, leave them as a comment down below. I'll be back next week and we're going to be looking at the reasons I have fleece on everything and the reasons I use netting. And we're going to look at the strawberry cage and the bean structure and all of that. So until then, stay well and thanks so much for watching. See you next week. One last thing before you go, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe to Lovely Greens and click that little bell icon so that you get notifications for when new videos are out.